Hey everyone, I'm out here in the garage, and what we're going to be doing today is replacing the timing belt and water pump on the 1999 Acura RL. So stay tuned. So if you're new to the channel, I just want to welcome you here, and hopefully you'll consider subscribing if you like what you see. Also, check out Car Apprentice on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I post lots of pictures and videos on those platforms before I post anything on YouTube. And occasionally I'll post things on those platforms I don't post on YouTube. Also, check out the website at carapprentice.com. And don't forget to hit the like button if you like this video. So what we're going to be doing today is replacing the timing belt and water pump on the 1999 Acura RL. In addition to that, we're also going to replace the balancer belt. We'll replace the camshaft seals, the crank seal, and then also the O-rings between the cylinder head and the valve train. Now, I'm going to be dividing this up into several parts because there's a lot of material to cover. In the description of each of the videos that I make, I'm going to put timeline information because I'm going to be pointing to other videos. So you'll probably have to step away from one of these videos, these primary videos, and go to the secondary videos that I've made on the channel already. So be looking for that. As we go along, I'll sprinkle in some tips that hopefully will make this job a little bit easier and a little bit more cost effective. So, let's get into it. The timing belt, water pump, and balancer belt should be replaced every 105,000 miles or 84 months, whichever comes first. Since the RL has what is known as an interference engine, where the valves and pistons can make contact if the timing belt breaks, causing severe engine damage, it's very important to adhere to that schedule. If you don't know the car's history, perform this service as soon as possible. Alright, we're going to take off the engine cover, so I've got a few 10mm to loosen. There's one here. And there are two, one here and then one over here. Alright, so we're going to remove the intake air duct right here. All this is coming out. So 10mm first here. And then there's a 10mm way down here. So I did this in the air filter replacement video. There's that one. And we'll just separate it from here. Lift it out. Just going to put this back here so I don't lose it. When removing components, I do one of three things with the fasteners. Install them back in the holes from which they came, install them on the component, or I bag them and tag them. Okay, we're going to take this off now. So disconnect the hose. Guess we can undo this now. This is a 10mm. Okay, take this off. Let's get this first here. Now we can take this out. Take the clamp off. Alright, so next I'm going to remove the alternator belt and the AC belt. Now I've done videos on that already, so I'm not going to repeat that here. I'm just going to take them off and we'll move ahead. So I'll point to those videos, you can check them out, and we're going to move forward. Alright, so in addition to taking the AC belt off, you also need to get this pulley out so that we can get the cover off later. Now there are two bolts holding this in. So what I would do is loosen this top bolt. It's really easy to see, so that one is pretty apparent. You can get to it. That's a 12mm. Then to get to the second bolt down here, this pulley is going to want to slide back down as you try to pull it up. So what I would do is just slide it up, tighten this nut by hand like that, just to hold it in place. And then put a socket on this one because it's going to be really hard to see it. So at least get a socket on there, and then put your ratchet on after that, and then you should be able to loosen this and get it off. All right, so we're going to take this bar off here. There's a 12 millimeter right there, and one more down there. Okay, so the next thing we need to remove is the power steering belt right here. I have done a separate video on replacing the power steering belt, so I'll point to that video. But I wanted to point out just this step here so you have that information. And so that should clear out this area a little bit more, and we're gradually just removing components so we can get to the covers that are behind everything here. All right, so I've got the belts all off here. I always like to mark them because I can never remember which one goes where. And I also mark the direction of rotation, which probably isn't all that important, but there we go. All right, so we're going to take this throttle control valve off next. Now, there are several connectors. There's one right here. Take this off. This one up here. And there's one more right down here. So they all just pinch right there and they come loose. All right, so this clamp needs to be loosened. That's a 10 millimeter. That's good. And then these two bolts here need to be taken out. That's a tight fit. I'm going to come back to that one. There we go. Okay. There we go. A little bit of work to get that off, but there it is. Okay, so I'm going to take the vehicle speed sensor connector off right here. Looks like either I broke it or somebody else broke this one. I don't remember breaking this though, so we'll just pull it off. Usually it's pressed kind of like these. There's that. Okay, so there are two wire harness holder bolts that are really hard to see, so I'll throw up pictures of those, but one is right here, right behind the pulley, right there, and the other one is right up here. So again, I'll throw pictures up because it's really hard to get a shot of those. There's the second one. And they are both the same length too. So there's the holder right there. All right, so I'm going to disconnect the breather hose, this one right here. So if you have difficulty getting that loose, you can try using your pliers. Just kind of wrap it around like this. Just be really careful there. There we go. And if you have some hose pliers, that'll work even better. Here are some hose pliers. I use these a lot, as you've seen in the videos. Okay, so we're going to disconnect these vacuum hoses. There's 3 of them. So we'll start with this one here. And this one. And then one more that's hidden behind these two. This one that's curved. There we go. So this curved one right here. All right, so back up top, we got 3 vacuum hoses here. Those 3. All right, so hopefully now we can get all this stuff out of the way. There's 2 bolts. There's one right here holding this bracket on, And then there's a second one that's kind of hard to point out. It is right down here, right behind this clip. So it's right underneath here. So get the first one off. Those are both 10 millimeters. There's the first one. Let me lift this up and move this out of the way. So this tab, just push it that way. Lift this out of the bracket. Now we got a little more space there. Okay, so to get this one out, I'm going to twist this wire that way, and then I can get in here with my pliers and hopefully loosen this clip here. There we go, that's out. And now I should be able to get to this one back here, this bolt. There we go. Okay, I'm going to take this bolt out to give myself a little more room to work. 10 millimeters. So that's off now. Alright, so I'm going to remove the dipstick tube. There is a 10 millimeter down there. It's really hard to see. I'll put a picture of it. So I've got an assortment of extensions here and a 10 millimeter. It's best to use probably 1/4 inch on this, but I got 3/8, so we're going to give it a shot. So that's loose now. We'll just go ahead and take it out. Okay, I think it fell down hopefully to the ground. We'll have to look for it in a second. And I'll pull this out now. Pull the dipstick out first, get it out of our way. There we go. There it is. This O-ring should be replaced. Looks like it's in pretty good shape, but we may replace it anyway. A tip I picked up on a forum is to place a wire nut in the dipstick hole to keep objects and debris out. Alright, so next up is removing the crank pulley, which is way down here. Now we need to set our timing, make sure that is at top dead center. So we're going to do that next. There are some access ports right here, so you can check to make sure the marks are correct. So there's an access port on this side, and there's also one on over here on this side. And then down on the crank pulley, we'll talk about the marks you need to have lined up down there too. So what I'm going to do, instead of using the access port here, just peel this back like that. I'm just going to take the covers off so you can see a little bit better what I'm doing. Alright, so to get this cover off, there are 3 10 millimeters. There's one here, there's one here, and there's one down, where is it, down here. I put a little bit of duct tape here because I have scarred this up before, and I've done that on the Legend too, trying to get these covers out. So I just put a little bit of no residue duct tape on here, and so when I peel this off, we shouldn't have any sort of residue left on there. And the second one here. Cool, that one hit the floor. Perfect. Let's peel this out this way. Slide it out. There we go. There's our cover on the right side. So passenger side is always considered right, so you might hear me say right and left. Alright, so we're going to work on this cover, which is the left side. And there's a bolt right here, so it's below this radiator hose right down there. There's one over here by the battery, and then there's a third one way down there. I'll take a picture of it. You have to get in between the arch for the bracket for the alternator. There's one. I always keep a magnet around. I still dropped it. We'll find it anyway. We'll find it later. Yeah, I think it landed on the splash shield, so we'll get to that. So that's something that always happens when you're taking bolts out, especially in this area. You're going to drop something. So we'll find it. The third one is down here. Okay, grab the magnet again. Hopefully I'll grab a hold of it this time. There we go. That one's got a lot of oil on it. So we'll find out, but I believe the camshaft seal is leaking on this side. All right, so I'm going to pull the cover off over here. So you basically pull it this way, and then you have to wiggle it a little bit that way to get it past the gasket on the lower cover. And then we'll take it out, hopefully. So it might not be a bad idea to take this bracket off here. So the clip, tab that way, then lift up. There we go. There's that cover. All right, so I've got a 19mm and a long-handled ratchet. I'm going to turn the crankshaft to get our marks to line up. So we need to have this mark here, the red mark, line up with the mark on the back cover. On this side, the blue mark lines up with the mark on the back cover. And then the white mark, the single white mark down there, lines up with this little arrow right here, this little pointer. Okay, so we've got it moving a little bit there. Take it slowly here. So our red mark is getting close to that one. This is the one I'm kind of looking at. All right, I'm going to stop here. Check my left side. Looks like that one's still off. Grab a light. It's like our white mark is almost there too, so we're just about top dead center on the #1 piston. So we go a little bit further here. We're just about there though. All right, so starting on the driver's side, there's our blue mark. You can see the mark back there on the cover. They're lined up perfectly. Come over here to the passenger side. There's our red mark. Perspective is a little bit off here, but it looks like it's pretty good. From your angle, it doesn't look right though, but it's pretty much right on. All right, and then right here, there's the crank pulley. You can see the white mark and that pointer in the middle are perfectly lined up. So it looks like our timing is set at top dead center, and we can proceed. All right, so right where this red mark is, I am going to make a mark right here on the belt, so I can transfer these marks onto the new belt and make sure the timing is correct. So we're going to mark it right there. And I'm going to put on here R for right. All right, so onto this side, I'm going to make a mark right here. And then put an L for left. Now, I can't do anything with the crank pulley just yet. I probably should have just waited until I got the lower cover off. So that's something you may want to do. Just wait till you get the lower cover off. And then we're going to mark the crankshaft location also on the belt. There are a couple ways to remove the pulley bolt. The first method involves using the Honda crank pulley tool, which has worked great in most situations over the years. This is a method I'll use here. The setup for the RL includes placing the square drive of a breaker bar that is around 15 inches or less in length in the square end of the pulley tool. The hex end of the tool is inserted into the crank pulley. The breaker bar gets braced by the subframe on the passenger side. I don't have a shorter breaker bar, so I'm reluctantly using one of my 1/2 inch ratchets. I've rebuilt this ratchet in the past, so I'll do it again if necessary. A 19mm deep socket on a breaker bar is placed on the crank pulley bolt and inside the hex end of the crank pulley tool. The second method is known as a starter bump trick, which is what I use on the Honda Pilot. Only one breaker bar and a 19mm socket are needed. The socket is placed on the crank pulley bolt and the breaker bar is secured firmly to the passenger side of the subframe with something like a bungee or zip ties. As a precaution, fuse number 22 for the fuel pump, which resides in the underdash fuse panel, needs to be removed to prevent the car from starting. Then just put the key in the ignition and give it a quick flick to engage the starter. And the bolt should be loose. You may have to do this more than once. Alright, so I've got the breaker bar almost straight up. Looks like our ratchet's still in position down there. I'm going to keep an eye on that. It might spin on me here or slip off the subframe. For additional leverage, I've placed a handle for my floor jack over the second breaker bar. Alright, so I'm on the other side of the car, on the passenger side. Throw a fender liner over here. And I'm going to pull this way. I'm going to keep my arms tight to my body so I don't get way out here like this and hurt something. So there we go. So that's on pretty tight. I think this is loose enough now. Let me take the pulley tool off of here. I can get it off. Okay. So no damage to our fans, which is good. So again, 19mm. Have a short socket, and this is big head on it. That's why I'm using a short socket. There it is. All right, so we've got the bolt out. Let's take the crankshaft pulley off. So slide this out, gradually off. Okay. There is our pulley right there. Looks like it's in pretty good shape. Not bad. It's not separating anywhere except for back here. That's not terrible. So that key right there, right here, just leave it in there, don't take it out. If you lose that, you'll be in bad shape. So just leave it where it is. All right, so I'm going to remove the bolts for the lower cover. I'm just going to take that out and then I'll show you all the locations. There's a bracket right here that has 2 bolts that go through the lower cover. So that's also an important thing to mention here. But the rest of the bolts, I'm just going to pull it out and I'll show you where everything goes. Here are the bolt locations for the lower timing cover. The locations circled in red use the longer bolts. To get the water pump out, which is partially behind the rear camshaft cover on the driver's side, I'm loosening the 3 camshaft pulley bolts before I remove the timing belt. In a separate video, the bolts on both the driver's side and the passenger side will be loosened to replace the front cam seals. Just tighten them by hand. Before removing the balancer belt, I installed the crank pulley without the bolt and turned it by hand to reset the timing. Again, the marks on the camshaft pulley should line up with the marks on the rear covers. Additionally, now that the lower cover has been removed, correct timing at the crankshaft can be verified by observing the alignment of the dot on the timing gear with the arrow on the oil pump. I made a mark on the crankshaft timing belt gear and the timing belt that is 4 teeth counterclockwise of the metal key. It's not necessary since we have the 2 camshaft marks as references, but it helps with routing the new belt. I'll show you a cool discovery I made when we installed the new belt. Alright, so hopefully you can see down there. This is the balancer belt right here, the small one. So we're actually going to loosen the adjuster on that 180 degrees. The adjuster is right here, this bolt here. and we're going to pull the belt off. So that's a 14 millimeter. That should be good enough. And the tensioner is going to pull that this way and then take our belt off. All right, let's get the belt out of here. I had to reposition myself. So I'm going to pull the belt off, push the tensioner that way. There we go. Yeah, it's grabbing onto the teeth over here. That's weird. But there's our belt. Right there. All right, so we're going to get the timing belt off now. We've got our, see our timing set again, back to normal, top dead center. And so we need to loosen this adjuster. I forgot to mention on the other pulley, you're supposed to tighten it back up. We're going to be replacing these anyway, that's why I didn't do that. So I'm going to take, this is a 12 millimeter. Again, about 180 degrees. That's good right there. Okay. Unroute it and then just take it out. I've got some marks from when I installed this last time, but those are different from what I called this passenger side last time. I'm calling it right this time. And then there's our left and driver's side. That's what I called it last time. All right, so the next thing we want to remove is the water pump, which is right here. It kind of runs, kind of an odd shape. It's going to run from here all the way over to here. This is the impeller for it right there. I don't know if you can see that. But anyway, what we're going to do is take this spring for the tensioner, the timing belt tensioner. We're going to take the spring off this peg here. So I have some pliers. Take that off. Let that hang there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take the water pump out. It's really hard to see anything in here, so I'm going to pull it out and then I'll show you where all the bolts go. So before removing the water pump, I would drain the coolant to prevent a mess. I have a drain pan on the floor here, but it's still not enough. I've already done a video on coolant replacement, so I'll point you to it. All right, so I've got most of the water pump bolts out. Actually, I got them all out. There's one that goes through the cover right there. It goes through the cover and it goes through the water pump. So the water pump basically is behind this cover, this rear cover. We're going to have to take off the pulley here, take the cover off, and then pull the water pump out. So I apologize, I didn't take a picture of the water pump and its bolts. The bolts are all 10 millimeters or 12 millimeters. The two 12 millimeter bolts on top are not easy to reach. I had to use a swivel socket for the bolt on the right and a box wrench for the bolt on the left. This is the new water pump. I put all the bolts I removed from the old pump on the new pump so I know where each goes. After I remove the old pump, I'll temporarily transfer the bolts over to it. Take these bolts all out. Okay, so all three bolts are out. We're just going to take this off now, like that. All right, so I think the 1/4 inch is going to work on this lower bolt. Go ahead and try that. There we go. So you can't see it, but there's an alternator bracket right here that's right in front of this cover. So there's not much space to work. Okay, there's that bolt. And I think the last one, I believe, is this one. I think that's the last one. So that's off now. All right, so there is our cam seal, and you can see here a little bit wet, so I believe it is leaking down here. All right, so I thought I had all the water pump bolts, but taking that cover off, it revealed one more bolt right here. That's a 10 millimeter. That's the last bolt, I think. All right, so I'm going to lift up on the hose here. I can already tell coolant's going to come rushing out of here. So I have plugged up the hole for the oil pan where the dipstick goes. Just put some paper towels in there. So I lift up on this. There we go. All right, so I've got some fine steel wool and paper towel. I'm just going to go around and clean off the mating surface for the water pump. All right, so what I'm going to do now is pick out the gasket that's right here. Goes between the water pump and this housing. So I have a mirror. Let's see what the heck I'm doing. There it is right there. So that's the one I need to get out. Now before I pull it out, I want to see how there's a little tab on here. So that's what it looks like. It's in this orientation. So the tab's over here in this corner.